Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're turning our attention now to leadership, essentially getting our leadership recruitment process right. We can't talk about this enough until we get it right, whenever that is. Well, this morning we've got Ademola Abass, who is a professor of international law and global affairs expert. He's at stint in governance as well, so he'll tell us about it probably if we get there. Good morning. Thank you for coming on again today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, now we're building up. I always says we're in election year. Well, there are different elections this year, actually. It leads up to the main one next year. And we've seen different persons putting themselves up, indicating their interest to go for, incidentally, the #1 job in this country. And so there are several perspectives. I mean, we see different climes. We see what is the main issue for those climes. But from here, it appears different. So it's right for us to talk about leadership, because if we get it right, many believe so many things in this country will go right. So if we could start from asking you, for instance, what would you consider as the bane of our leadership in this country?
Thank you very much for having me, and nice seeing you again. Well, it's really difficult to put finger on one thing that is the bane of leadership in this country. It's a panoply of factors, basically. Number one could think very carefully about the process itself for recruiting leaders for this country. When you talk about the bane, you're talking about maybe the most pivotal challenge, the most crippling, consideration in anything. But when you look at the way our leaders have emerged, especially probably since maybe 1999 or thereabout, and I use that date, that was when Nigeria engaged with democratic tenets after the whole popular, military regime. Probably when the country became independent in 1960, you had a different crop of leaders who actually, and that's why I use 1999, because for all their weaknesses, for all their challenges, you had a bunch of leaders in the 60s, from 50s to 60s, that actually still shared some tenets that you don't see today. I think our fathers grew up in those generations watching debates in the parliament, throwing banters, and, as it was in the best traditions of, for instance, the United Kingdom, that many of them learned from. You had leaders, there's Zikwe, Awolowo and co., also from the North, Tafawa Balewa, very, very intelligent, very, very savvy in their own right, even if they have political differences. You had leaders who actually understood then what principles were. The bane of Nigerian leadership today, if I would put one hand to it, is that there is no moral inclination in 99% of those who govern Nigeria as a country, at whatever level. And when there is no morality in anything you do, then there is a serious problem.
When you speak about 1999, now you say 99% of those has got challenges. Let's even go back to 1999 again, by way of looking at the Constitution. The requirement to be the leader, those who go for the #1 job in this country. I know it may sound a little funny, but it's serious.
Look at the law. It's not funny.
Yeah, look at the law, for instance. Look at what it states, the 1999 Constitution, Section 131. It says, a person shall be qualified for election to the office of president if A, he is a citizen of Nigeria by birth, he has attained the age of 40, he's a member of a political party and is sponsored by that political party, and D, he's been educated up to at least school certificate level or its equivalent to be the #1 person in this country. But we know if you need to get into a private sector, some cases, 5 years, 10 years.
Chamberlain, even public sector. He served in the public sector before. Even the public sector, you have a minimum. Definitely, it's not school certificates.
Does this count for something?
Oh, it counts for everything, Ayo and Chamberlain. Number one, when you look at what we put on the board, why 40 years of age? We need to interrogate it. Look, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, she's just 38. She took over in her 30s, in her mid-30s. Sanna Marin in Finland, she's just 38. Goita, even in Mali, interim, she's just 36. The youngest president or the youngest leader in the world today is a captain regent of San Remo. I'm talking about Giacomo Simoncini. He's just 27 years old. You have 20-something-year-olds who have governed country, who are governing country, 30-something years, who are doing fantastically well. We are still hung on. Somebody must be 40. By the way, many of those who sat and who drafted that particular law, they served this country in their 20s and 30s. Don't let's forget that. We produced presidents who signed some of the constitutions, who were in their 30s when they became head of states of this country. So it's very, very cynical. That's number one. So the age cap then was arbitrary. Today is even more arbitrary. You know, when you say 40, and then we keep on saying we must give youths the opportunity to serve the country. By the time you're already entering 40, you know, you're already sort of getting to departure lunge, to be honest with you, of that particular youth bracket. So age-wise, you're already cutting out a chunk. Make no mistake, about 60% of Nigerian demography is under the age of 35. So when you say you cannot aspire to the highest portion in the land until you are 40, you're already cutting out about 60-65% of your population. It doesn't make any sense. That's number one. Number two, you have to be a member of a political party. Mm-hmm. You know, again, that already forecloses independent candidacy. You know, and there's nothing wrong with an independent candidate who is probably accepted across the country to come forward. So when you do that, in other words, what that section of the Constitution has done is to actually rig the leadership process against youths, against people who don't belong to political parties, against people who don't have anything to do with, you know, being in a particular party formation, you know. And so when you have that, that is a very, very fundamental problem. So everything is wrong with that particular part of law.
But how about that academic qualification?
The qualification, now you're talking about, I think the school certificate, maybe.
Or its equivalent.
Or its, I don't even know what its equivalent is.
Maybe if you attempt it.
You know, I would think when that constitution was drawn, you know, you might still say school certificate because by the time we came out of high schools, I'm sure maybe some of us here, Ayu and Chamberlain, in the maybe mid-80s, you know, thereabout, you could say school certificate counted for something. Mm-hmm. You know, you prepared for WAEC, you knew what you were going for. You know, but today, can you talk about school certificate the same way you talk about, look, our fathers, our parents, our mothers, we talk about standard 2, standard 3 in those periods of 60s and...
Would that be the equivalent?
That's what I'm saying, as being comparable to our own class 5 degree certificate in 1980s. When you're now talking about school certificate today, to be honest with you, it doesn't even measure probably to primary 2 of 1970s in terms of quality. So in other words, it is odious, it is old, it is anachronistic. It should be thrown out of the Constitution completely. You should be looking for at least a minimum in this country of university degree. Not that, look, again, it doesn't have to be arbitrary. But at least you're thinking university degree, at least we're thinking, well, you know, there's a presumption in your favor that by the time you've done university degree, you have some level of understanding. That is not canonized anyway, but at least there's a certain level. But I think that, you know, school certificate is a bit too low.
You know, because sometimes the country looks, wonders, complains about how the economy is going south, how certain policies somersault, one comes up today, the other comes up tomorrow. And meanwhile, we just gloss over this saying, listen, the people who we have been elected don't even have the capacity to do much more than they are doing. And so people don't seem to focus on some of these. And wait a minute, that seems to be where the challenge may really lie if we have a second look at it.
No, that is a fact, Chamberlain. You're absolutely right in that. But it goes beyond that, though. Let me throw this in. You could have a defective process of selecting. You know, the process of selecting leaders, like whether in political space or in other spaces, it's not just one. There are processes. So if there's a failure of one part of the process, there should be a rain checking. There should be an opportunity to correct that. But look at us. Let's even say we make a mistake of pushing X out, whether as a minister or as a president whatsoever. There should be a way we should be able to check that mistake. See what happens. Nigeria is about the only country I know in the entire universe that you appoint ministers, you send their names to the Senate, they don't have portfolios. Right, at that point in time, I'm sure you're aware of that. The Senate will then clear them as ministers. You begin to ask them, what questions are they asking them? It is only when they've been cleared that then the president will then begin to allocate portfolios to them. So the Senate actually clears somebody for a particular position without being able to question their capacity on that particular position.
Doesn't that also raise the question of vision? I have asked this question a number of times. Okay, where are we going? If we don't know where we're going, can we get the right driver to drive the vehicle? I mean, you recruit someone who has skills to drive a Vespa, to drive all the skills he has is to drive a Vespa of the 70s, and you give him a Marco Polo, or with a 100-man capacity, or a truck and all of that. You put the person behind the vehicle to drive it. So perhaps the question then would be, where are we going? Chamberlain just cited the example of if it was in the private sector, you wanted to recruit someone, you recruit the person based on the person's pedigree that you can see on his CV. So and the person comes into that organization with the assurance and confidence that, okay, I know what this organization is about, I know where this organization is going, this organization can also help my career path. So if we do not have a direction where we are going as a polity, as a nation, okay, this is what we want to achieve in the next 10, 20, 15 years or whatever, how was the assurance that we'll be able to recruit the right person to get the job done?
Well, thank you very much for that. The question of vision, as you rightly said, is also a functionality of other factors. In law, I'm a lawyer by training, obviously. In law, we say, nemo dat quod non habet. You cannot give that which you do not have. It's the first principle of Latin maxim that you learn as a law student. You can't give something that you don't have. Let's look at our country today, to be honest with you. Sometimes, when I look at the field of those who have come out to contest presidency, I cry. That a country of almost 200 million people, it is same recycled individuals over and over that we are still promoting today as president. It breaks your heart in a way. But look, let's leave that for now. The truth is, I remember, I think it was a program that we had about 3 weeks ago that this issue of capacity came to play. And one of the things we actually brought out at that point in time was, look, when people come out in Nigeria to contest, we hardly ask them some relevant questions. Questions like, okay, in the last 4 years, you came out 4 years ago. You lost an election, maybe in Lagos State. We didn't hear you for the past 4 years. Every single pivotal issue that came in this state, let's take Lagos State as an example, you never said anything. Then election time comes around again, we start seeing you that you want to talk. Or you've been booted out of office for whatever reason, or you've been denied the opportunity of coming back, for a second term or whatever term you want to come back. Then you went into your cocoon. You didn't say anything for the past 2-3 years. Then suddenly, because election comes around, you start now throwing things out.
Career politicians?
Yes, start throwing things out. Oh, youth must understand and this and that. Where were you? One of the questions would be, where were you when youth were being brutalized and killed in the same state that you were? You know what I'm talking about? In other words, we do not ask questions to people who come out. And I remember, and I mentioned somebody then, that at least for better or for worse, this person comes out and takes a public stance. It is only through your utterances, it is only through your contribution to public discourses that we can begin to gauge your intellectual sagacity, your moral finesse, or your moral turpitude, and your smartness in your grasp of the issues. You don't just get that from a bunch of Nigerian leaders that have been governing us at all.
Two things, Prof, on that point you made. First is the system that we have. I see that from the unions to the political parties, when, for instance, unions are going on a particular protest, they want something, or the parties are there speaking against government issues and things like that, we don't see them come up with their own fact and data, challenging the policy that whichever area that they're criticizing has put out, as we see in some other countries where they have this shadow system. So should we be looking towards having a similar thing like that? Would it help in any way?
Well, that's important. It's a very interesting question because I think the NCF, National Constitution Forum Front,
okay,
to which belong Professor Patutomi and co, and actually floated about 3 weeks ago, the first maybe shadow government you could talk about. In a way that, look, it is very important. Nigeria is a place where political offices of any level, whether you are president or you literally fall on people's laps without asking for it. Majority, in this particular administration, there are so many governors in Nigeria today who never wanted to be governors in the first place, who wanted to be maybe senators or members of House of Representatives and so on and so forth. But because there was madness in the circle of those who are going to be going for that particular position, it literally fell on their laps. No, so when you suddenly woke up one day and you became the governor of a state without even asking for it or begging for it, you have no clue whatsoever. You're talking about vision.
Yeah.
So you are clueless, you are visionless. Now the question then is, who do you put in position to drive your vision? You haven't got a vision in the first place. So who do you put in?
The second part of that is that...
Sorry, Chamberlain, I'm sorry, maybe on the same issue. There's an example you'd given of a country in this world that has a succession system, that they have a pool of leaders ready to take over at any point in time.
Yeah, right from the surface of, you know who the next president or prime minister will be.
So there is a pool of leaders that have been groomed and trained over the years. Anytime they find themselves in leadership, they can perform. We do not have that system, do we?
We don't. Precisely the point. We don't. We don't because of what we were talking about earlier on. We don't because there is no process, there is no system established to say that, look, even from this party structure, I mean, Chamberlain, just when we were making a side comment before the program came on, you talk about transition, and you refer to the question of football. You know, I think one of the teams that's completed this AFCON whatsoever, they talk about the fact that many of them were based in Spain and they played together as a team. So you could see how they gelled in the football pitch. And in those days, when people moved from under 17 to 21 to this and that, you could see the graduation. You could see the transition you were talking about. In our political system, we haven't got that at all.
Forgive me, Chamberlain, I'm really sorry. Don't forget that question. Now, we are only talking about 2023 now. We should actually be talking about 2043 because the 10-year-old now, the 15-year-old now, add 20 years to their lives, add 30 years to their lives, they are the ones that are going to be in government at that time. We don't have any system of recruiting them, of preparing them for that future that is certainly going to come. The education system, for instance, the economy and all those things, it's not that the capacity is not there. But unless we prepare them, we are going to be worse then than we are now.
I mean, that is a very fair point, and that's a very important observation there. Look, you go back to, let's take Britain as an example. Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Peter Mandelson, and Robin Cook. They were the big four. They started at a very small level within the Labour Party. They prided themselves as constituting the new Labour movement in those days because the system allowed them. Because within the party structure, there are cadres. And they grew themselves right from school. I think I lived in that country at that point in time. So they were called the Big Four. And you could see what they did when they eventually had the opportunity. So they're able to transition from that small place to becoming leaders of the country. We haven't got that system at all, simply because we have an electoral law system, whether it's passed or not, that is already sort of rigged against the youth. Youth cannot come to that. Because when you're talking about 2033 or 2043, you're basically talking about recruiting youths into the system that will then grow within the system in the next 10, 15 years to begin to take the reins of the government of this country. We haven't got that because we are already excluding, systemically, we are excluding our youth by either making sure that until they are 40. Now, how many youths are going to be faffing around until they are 40 to contest and to go for any political post in Nigeria? That's number one. Number two, in terms of financial capabilities, they haven't got it. The humongous amount of money that by law you have to fork out to be able to pick forms for positions is incredible. How many 20s and 30s? Meanwhile, we don't want these youths to go and look for quick money. Now, you are youth. You want to play political because maybe you are disgusted by what is going on. And you really fairly want to play at whatever level. But you haven't got the money. You haven't got anything. Tell me why, when that youth will not start beginning to think crazily that they can go and kill somebody and then make money.
And you know, for those who keep talking about this and then putting the young people down and not giving them the opportunity, when you look at those who are leaving the country, both the ones who are giving us a good name and a bad name, check out the demographic. Maybe that may send the message across to people. But the second point I was trying to make about that is that even if you get people, maybe like professors, your colleagues, for instance, those who are up there academically or who have that kind of qualification and mental capacity to move things forward, when they go out there to campaign, the people who you're reaching out to, there seems to be that this us and them You know, we have several of them who tell us here when they go out to campaign and tell them about their plans and their programs. Maybe the NCF might even tell you a lot more. And people, they are on a different page. They just want something right now. They say if he's hungry, he has to feed first before he can think. How do we address that?
I think that's one of the biggest problems we face in Nigeria. We talk about leadership, we talk about followership. The Nigerian followership politically is so much brutalized that it's not even thinking in the next 4 or 5 years. They're thinking about now because, number one, they've lost faith in our political leadership. And so be it. We live in a country in which people get into power, practically there's no accountability. Recalling anybody is not part of our systems. So you have followers who doggedly put people in power. They have no control over them. And by the way, this began long ago. Don't forget, if you go back to the 60s, when late S.L.A. Akintola famously said, Atiko Jibolo shall not walk any but now we have put us in charge. Let's see who is going to remove us. Basically, just I'm paraphrasing. So that mentality has been there. You know, so yeah, whether you're a professor or whatsoever, you go out to campaign and this and that. People, number one, they want to eat. They know once you get there, you're not going to. So the first thing we need to address is that confidence deficit that exists quite legitimately on the part of Nigerian followership, because they've been taken for granted for too long. So tell me, if I go out today to say I'm campaigning for them, they're going to be cynical. That's number one. The cynicism will be in two directions. Oh, you're a professor. Professors are just going to be talking books. It's a fact. Even within a government that you sit together in a cabinet, professors are sometimes looked upon with disdain by your political colleagues. Disdain that you are theoretical. You know, you don't understand the pragmatism of politics. Pragmatism means that there are certain things that you wouldn't do for them.
You know, speaking about solution, you've talked about some of them. I think there are a few places that come to memory. I know that I think Kaduna governor, they're doing something about political training or schooling, something like that, mentoring young people. I think I also know, Covenant Christian Center, they do this program. They have a political system wherein they do certain things. And then I think Anambra State doing something about leadership, political leadership as well. I don't know, I don't remember some of the others, so I know there are several other people out there. But when you were in governance, you know, in Lagos, what is it that you saw that you think we need to change if we need to improve and do things better?
No, number one, first and foremost, culture of sycophancy. It cuts across the whole of Nigerian gamut politically, in so many other aspects, but at least politically. The culture of sycophancy is such that it's very stifling. And I will say this, you may have a good governor who has a vision, but when you surround yourself with a lot of sycophants, then you are in trouble. Because eventually, if you are a cabinet of 20, 30, even leave cabinet, if the governor surrounds himself or herself with 20 people, and you have, all you need at a point in time probably is about 3, 4 clear-thinking people who can give you excellent directions. But they're overwhelmed by 16 others who are singing your praise. And unfortunately, those 16 others are the people who talk to electorates. The governor is going to listen to them more than you. But man, the governor will have forgotten that he or she brought you in the first place because you're a technocrat. Because he or she believes that you have something to offer. So that is so the culture of sycophancy has to go. Then number two, I think we talked about it was on that program where we talked about a servant leader kind of dynamic. That has to go away. Look, I don't understand the level of mediocrity that we got into this country. That we are commissioning roads and we are taking Ashoibi in Nigeria in 2023, 2022, 2021. We should not be promoting mediocrity. You know, it's just like when you go to an ATM machine and you put your card in and you take your money and you're happy. It's the money you put there anyway that you're using your card to withdraw. You put a government in power. They campaign on certain mandates. I'm going to do this and this and that. And then they give you a road or they give you a hospital and you are taking Ashoebi and this and that and you are dancing all over the place and that is splashed all over newspapers. It shouldn't be the way we should go. We need to change that culture completely. So sycophancy has to go. Mediocrity has to go. Then there must be enough room for civil society organizations. CSOs are very important. You're talking about training. You know, CSOs are very, very critical to development of any nation, of any community, because they are actually more in contact with the grassroots.
Okay, just a very quick one because we have to go shortly. What we can't wait until 2040 for the youths to take over, to get involved. What would you recommend to them now? You have 60 seconds.
Youth should go and form their own political party. Youth should go and form their own political party.
How?
How? By going to INEC and register. There's nothing wrong with that. They can go and register.
But they don't have the necessary requisite structure to move through.
You talked about funding challenge.
But that is the point. That is registering party per se. You don't need millions to register your party. It's to run. Look, if we have startups in Nigeria doing excellently well. Nigerian youths are incredibly gifted. Let's not make a mistake. You have the power of social media in their hand. These are the youths who mobilize for Big Brother Nigeria overnight.
Yeah,
they mobilize billions. If they're really serious about leadership,
Prof, can I apply that to what you said previously about UK, the Big Four?
Yes.
They went through the system,
Precisely.
the labor system.
Yes.
Now, if they channel that energy they have for entertainment and bring it into any of these established political parties, can they take them over and achieve?
But that is the problem. That is the problem. The existing political are so contaminated that I don't know the kind of salvation you need to bring them alignment. So,
but they have the structure.
Yeah, they have the, I'm not doubting that they have the structure, but what I'm saying is that it's either, look, you're talking about youth, many of them don't have political experience at all, make no mistake, and they're coming into established parties that are gargantuan in nature, that have this structure, that have all the resources. They will put them there and they will stifle them to death.
Yeah, but they have to learn, because if they don't have the structure, when they form the party that they will learn.
I agree with that, Chamberlain, but you can learn when the system is permissible for that. It's permissive for that. The system, the political system we have in Nigeria today does not permit Nigerian youth to join them and learn from. They will frustrate you. I have seen people who went into government with brilliant minds and they came out wretched from that same. What I'm saying is that if Nigerian youths are serious enough, and they're serious, but if they are serious enough about playing, political leadership role in this country, they should not wait until the existing parties call them to order. They should form their own party, and then they can then lead their own route and then begin to work. 10, 20 years from now, maybe they'll be able to do something incredible for the country.
Well, yeah, in the short term, the media too has a huge role to play. We need to ask people questions based on what they've done before, what would they do about the economy, because globally, the economy is king. So if the economy is not right, it leads to unrest, protests, several things. But we have to thank you, Prof. Always a pleasure to have you on. Ademola Abass, the Professor of International Law and Global Affairs Expert.
Thank you.